Today, we're going to talk about something that happens inside all of us, every single day. It's this hidden battle between how we feel in the moment and the rules we've tried to set for ourselves. Think of it as your internal weather going up against your internal architecture. Let's dive in.
And this is a really powerful tension. It's way more than just a question of having enough willpower. This is actually at the very core of how we build an identity, how we find any kind of stability, and really how we decide who we're going to be from one day to the next.
So let me ask you this directly. When you make a decision, something small like getting out of bed or big like starting a new project, what's actually running the show? Is it your immediate feeling? Or is it a principle, a rule you've already decided on? So let's break down the first side of this coin, living by mood. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's when your actions are pretty much just a reaction to what you're feeling right now. Your energy level, what you want this second, that internal weather we talked about. And yeah, it can feel really authentic, but let's be honest, moods are not the most reliable guides, are they?
Okay, so here you can see them side by side, and the contrast is pretty stark. Living by mood is driven by your emotional state. It feels real in the moment, but it's totally unstable. Now, living by rule, that's driven by principles you've chosen. And I want to be really clear here. Rule doesn't mean some kind of oppressive prison. It's about building an internal structure for yourself, something that gives you stability and honestly just saves you the mental energy of having to redecide everything all the time.
So, what does living by rule actually look like in the real world? It simply means your actions are guided by your commitments, no matter how you feel. The classic example, right? You make a rule. You work out at 6 a.m. When that alarm clock goes off, there's no debate. There's no negotiation with your sleepy, I don't want to mood. The decision has already been made.
I love this slide because it's basically the internal monologue we all have. The voice of mood is so fickle, right? It's all, I feel like it, or, nah, this vibe is off. But the voice of rule is anchored in something deeper, in your identity. It says, I said I would, or even, this is just who I am. One is a reaction to the weather, and the other is the bedrock underneath it all.
And you know what? There's actual brain science to back this up. Our mood-based decisions, they're often coming from our limbic system. That's our emotional, reactive, I want it now part of the brain. But rule-based actions, they rely on the prefrontal cortex, the part that does the planning and the long-term thinking. And here's the key takeaway, the most important part. Every single time you choose the rule over the mood, you are literally, physically strengthening those executive control circuits in your brain. You're building that muscle.
But of course, it's not that black and white. You can't just live at one extreme. If you live only by your mood, you're heading for chaos. Inconsistent relationships, projects you never finish, a sense of just drifting. But on the other hand, a life of only rigid, ironclad rules, that's a fast track to burnout, to feeling emotionally numb, totally detached from your own gut feelings.
So the goal, the sweet spot, is a balanced, mature model. It's where your emotions are treated like really important information. They're signals you need to listen to. But, and this is a big but, they don't get the final say. Your chosen principles, your values, they get to make the final call. The model is so simple and powerful. Emotion informs, principle decides.
Okay, now this is where the whole conversation goes a level deeper. Because for a lot of people, this isn't just about discipline or making a simple choice. What happens when the very idea of a rule doesn't feel like safety, but feels like a threat? What if your internal system is wired to see any kind of structure as dangerous? And this is where we absolutely have to talk about trauma. Because trauma isn't just some psychological idea. It's a biological reality. It can literally change your brain's entire operating system, shifting it away from long-term planning and locking it into immediate survival. Let's get a little more specific. After trauma, the amygdala, which is kind of like the brain's smoke detector, it can become hypervigilant, seeing danger everywhere. And at the exact same time, the prefrontal cortex, our calm, rational CEO, it becomes harder to access. So the end result, the survival part of your brain is shouting, and the planning part can barely get a word in.
This rewiring completely changes the most fundamental question your nervous system is trying to answer. For a regulated system, the question is, what aligns with my values? What's my long-term goal? But for a system stuck in survival mode, the only question that matters is, am I safe right now? And when that's the question, your mood, that feeling of safety or threat, suddenly becomes the most important piece of data you have.
This is such a powerful way to think about it.
For someone who's been through trauma, what might look like emotional weather or being moody from the outside is actually a survival radar on the inside. Every little shift in feeling is urgent because the body truly believes it's detecting a real threat and is just trying to protect you.
And this can lock a person into a really painful cycle. It starts with the trigger, which causes this big emotional spike. Then a decision is made based purely on that mood, just to find some immediate relief. You get that short-term fix, but it often has a long-term consequence that goes against your goals. And that consequence? It brings on shame, which, you guessed it, becomes a brand new trigger, and the loop starts all over again.
Trauma can also really mess with our sense of who we are over time. A stable, rule-based life kind of depends on this solid story of, this is who I am. But for someone in a constant state of survival, that identity can feel shattered, replaced by the ever-shifting, moment-to-moment reality of, this is how I feel right now.
And this is just so incredibly important to understand. This over-reliance on mood after trauma, it's not immaturity. It's not a character flaw or a lack of discipline. It's actually a form of deep biological wisdom. It's the nervous system making the right call, prioritizing what matters most. It's saying, long-term stability can wait. Immediate survival absolutely cannot.
So the path forward, the path to healing, isn't about ignoring your moods or forcing yourself to follow a bunch of rigid rules. It's much more gentle. It's about slowly, patiently, creating a sense of safety inside your own body. It's about learning that feelings are just signals, not commands. And it's about designing gentle, flexible rules that feel like your own choice, not something forced on you. You can really see this whole thing as a journey. Healing is a progression. You start in a place where your mood completely controls your behavior. Then you move to a place where your mood informs your behavior. You can listen to it as data. And finally, you arrive at a place of internal safety, where your chosen values can once again be the one to guide you.
And this brings us to a final, really profound thought. Maybe the goal isn't to get to a place where you never feel fear or anxiety or discomfort again. Maybe real integration, real freedom, is the ability to stand right in the middle of that storm of feeling, to look it in the eye, and still be able to say, I feel all of this, and I am still choosing my standard. That right there is where true stability is born.